Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle. Me, in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. Lordy, lordy, this information is continuing to unfold. What the heck is going on in our world? What's the truth? In my series Freemasonry and Satanism, I've covered a lot of topics. Aliens, UFOs, conspiracy theories, Helena Blavatsky, secret doctrine, Aleister Crowley, the Book of the Law, Freemasonic Bible, remote viewing, looking at my books here, Dungeon, Fire and Sword, John Robinson, monuments, satanic gargoyles, pyramids, giants, transformation, morals and dogma, the Bible for the Freemasons, a dozen 2-hour videos on that, the Blue Lodge Handbook for the Freemasons, a dozen 2-hour videos on that book, the Encyclopaedia of the Occult, major trends in Jewish mysticism, Bloody Zion, Who Financed Hitler, Edgar Casey, channeled material, the Terror Conspiracy, Oklahoma City bombing, 9/11, the Black Sun, the cause of world unrest, Germany Must Perish, series number 124, the Black Pope, series 152, Masonry Illustrated, series 171, and the Encyclopaedia Arts and Sciences, published in 1803. When I find this stuff in PDF form, I have to do it this way. In the bottom it says 1803. If you do some searching online. So I made 3 videos so far from this encyclopedia on the topic Illuminati. And it is E to P, so I thought to myself, well, Masonry must be in here. And I finished reading it. Wow, what a revelation. Published in 1803. So sometimes you got to find some of these older books, documents, whether you can actually buy the 100 or 200-year-old book, which can get quite expensive. But sometimes you get lucky and you get a good deal. Or you can find them online. Special websites even charge you a fee. And sometimes, like in this case, you can find the PDF for free. Download it to your computer and then print out the desired pages. Make yourself a little binder. So I'm going to read from the topic of Masonry, Freemasonry, and there is some interesting information in here. Actually, unbelievable information. So why don't I just get reading, and I got some little side topics to add to this video. Some of the things that are mentioned under Masonry was quite interesting, so I had to go look them up. All right. So I do know that I pronounce Freemasonry. I guess a lot of people do that, so pardon my mispronunciation. Freemasonry is a subject which, after the conspicuous detail given in the encyclopedia of its lodges and wardens and grand masters, we should not have resumed in its place, but to warn our countrymen against the pernicious superstructure which have been rallied by the French and Germans on the simple system of British Freemasonry. So apparently they're saying, this author, that the British Freemasonry was an innocent organization for skilled masons, construction workers. But it has been corrupted by the French and Germans Freemasonry, who were focused more on the mysteries, some kind of mystery religion. Much falsehood is currently respecting the origin and antiquity of the Masonic Association. So much falsehood is invading these institutions. That the Dionysus of Asia Minor, sorry about the F's and S's, messes with my speech here. Look, it has an F, it's supposed to be an S. That the Dionysus of Asia Minor were a society of architects and engineers who had the exclusive privilege of building temples, strata, theaters under the mysterious tutelage of Bacchus, seems to be unquestionable. So the original masonry were building buildings, temples, theaters, strata, bridges, whatever. Seems to be an unquestionable conclusion. We are also certain that there was a familiar trading association during the Dark Ages in Christian Europe, which monopolized the building of the great churches and castles and enjoyed many privileges under the patronage of the various sovereigns. Circumstances, says Dr. Robinson, which it would be tedious to enumerate and discuss, continue this association longer in Britain than on the continent. But there is no good evidence that anterior to the year 1648, any man fought admission into it who was not either a builder or by profession. So prior to 1648, most people who tried to get into these organizations were builders by professions, or at least skilled in the science of architecture. At that period, indeed, Mr. Ashmole, the famous antiquity, see Ashmole in the Encyclopaedia, was admitted into the lodge at Warrington, together with his father-in-law, Colonel Mainwaring, and these are the first distinct and unequivocal instances that we have in Britain of men unconnected with the operative Masons being received into the mysterious fraternity. So these two men were admitted as Masons, and they had nothing to do with construction or architecture. The secrecy, however, of the lodges made them fit places for the meetings of the royalists, and accordingly many royalists became Freemasons. So it seems like around 1640, 50 years before 1700, so that's 17, 18, 19, 2000, so like 350 years ago, plus or minus, the royals, the princes and kings and royal families, were using these Freemasonic lodges as their secret meeting places. And I'm sure the Freemasonic people controlling their lodges would not turn down these royal elites. They might get in trouble, you think? How are you going to say no to the king, or the prince, or the duke? Nay, the ritual of the master's degree seems to have been formed, or perhaps twisted from its original instruction, so as to give an opportunity of founding the political principles of the candidate and of the whole brethren present. For it bears so easy an adaptation to the death of the king, to the overturning of the veritable constitution of the English government, by three orders, by the mean democracy, and by the re-establishment, by the efforts of the loyalists, that this would start into every person's mind during the ceremonial, and could hardly fail to show, by the countenances and behavior of the brethren, how they were affected. So I suppose with the death of a king in a country like Britain or France or anywhere, things change, rules change. That makes sense. Look what we get in the United States here with the recent election of Donald Trump. Make America Great Again, and his predecessor 8 years ago was change. Bring change. But it doesn't look like Donald Trump is going to make America great again. Sorry to enter my political opinion. I voted for Donald, of course. I could not vote for Hillary. Again, that's just my opinion. And then, of course, I voted for Obama after having enough of George Bush Jr. It was all insane. 9/11, all this craziness. And it seems to me a lot of it's intentional. That I'll stand by. And it is coming from these secret societies, hence why I'm having this discussion. And there's some explosive material in this couple pages I have here. The supposition receives much countenance from the well-known fact that Charles II, King Charles, was made a Mason and frequented the lodges. It is not unlikely that besides the amusement of the vacant hour, which was always agreeable to him, he had pleasure in meeting with his loyal friends and the occupations of the lodge, which recalled to his mind their attachment and services. His brother and successor, James II, was a more serious and manly cast of mind, and had little pleasure in frivolous ceremonies of masonry. He did not frequent the lodges, but by this time they were the resort of many persons who were not of the profession or members of the trading corporation, buildings or bridges or architecture. The circumstances, in all probability, produced the denominationals of free and accepted Masons. So that's where they get the free and accepted Masons, by allowing these non-Masons to join. I think they called it speculative Masonry. Okay. The person who has the privilege of working in any incorporated trade is said to be a freeman of that trade. So that's why it's free and accepted. Others were accepted as brethren and admitted as a kind of honorary freedom, as the case may be, other trades and incorporations, without having, as far as we can learn for certain, a legal title to earn a livelihood by the exercise of it. So these people who were joining were other than tradesmen, craftsmen, masonry, architects. It was not till some years after this period that the lodges made open professions of the cultivation of general benevolence, and that the grand aim of the fraternity was to enforce the exercise of all of the social virtues. So it looks like the lodges were taken over, which a lot of people know. The establishment of a fund for the relief of unfortunate brethren did not take place till the very end of the 17th century, the late 1600s, and we may presume that it was brought about by the warm recommendations of some benevolent members who would naturally enforce it by the addresses to their assembled brethren. So they were taking up collections to help the unfortunate, misfortuned other brethren or other people. Hence the probable origin of those philanthropic discourses which are occasionally delivered in the lodges by one of the brethren as an official talk. So from what I've been reading here, they were using the charitable services, helping poor people, and other members of the brethren who were unfortunate. Maybe they got sick or hurt on the job. But they found out that when they did this and bragged about it, it gave the lodges a good reputation, of course. And they do that with the Shriners now. And there's a lot of controversy about that topic, which I won't get into in this video. The boasted philanthropy of Masons serves, however, another purpose. The inquisitive are always prying and teasing, eager to discover the secrets of their neighbors, and hence the brethren are induced to say that universal benevolence is the great aim of the order, for it is the only point on which they are at liberty to speak. So the Freemasons, as we all know, have to swear under threat of death not to divulge the secrets, but the one they do tell the public is that they are trying to be a universal benevolence organization. Boasted philanthropy. They forget that universal benevolence and philanthropy are inconsistent with the exclusive and monopolizing spirit of the association. So the Freemason lodges are exclusive and and they are monopolizing spirit of the association. So that really wouldn't be conducive to being a boasted philanthropy organization, which not only confines its benevolence to its own members, like any other charitable association, but hoards up in its bosom inestimable secrets, whose natural tendency, they say, is to form the heart of this generous and kind conduct and inspire us with love to all of mankind. The profane world cannot see the benefits of concealing from public view a principle or motive which so powerfully induces a Mason to be good and kind. So they do call people who are not Masons profane. The brother says that publicity would rob it of its force, and we must take him at his word, and our curiosity is so much the more excited to learn what are the secrets which have so singularly a quality that they must be totally unlike the principles of science which produce their effects only when made public. And please remember, this document, this encyclopedia, was printed in 1803, and all of the S's on many of these words look like F's, so I have to quickly interpret them. But there is a point to this conversation that gets more interesting as we move along. From the account of Masonry, it would appear to have been at first a loyal association, and as such it was carried over from England to the continent. For all the Masons abroad, persons to have received their mysteries from Great Britain. It was first transported into France by the zealous adherents of King James, who, together with their unfortunate master, took refuge in that country, and it was cultivated by the French in a manner fested to the taste and habits of that highly polished and frivolous people. So when they brought the Masonry to France, it was designed to match with the highly polished and frivolous people, and it came to France by the zealous adherents of King James, who took refuge in that country, I guess after being dethroned in Britain. And remember, King James is supposed to have written the Bible, the King James Version. And later, recently, I found out that King James wrote a book on demons. Maybe we'll look at that. So it's just interesting why this king would be the one who would be approving the Bible used by most of us, and a king who wrote a book on demons. To the three simple British degrees, apprentice, fellowcraft, and master, they gradually added degrees innumerable, all decorated with stars and ribbons, and into their lodges they introduced the impieties and seditious doctrines. Seditious doctrines. So after the first 3 degrees that they brought over from Britain into Germany and France, etc., even to the United States, they started adding more degrees into the mysteries and into the seditious doctrines of Voltaire and the other philosophers. And I did look up Voltaire and read briefly on him, and he was an atheist to the high degree. He hated the church. So they were adding some mysterious degrees, seditious doctrines of Voltaire. Indeed, if the account which the Abbé Burrell gives, and Abbé Burrell and apparently Dr. John Robinson were 2 of the authorities 200 plus years ago, who was researching these topics from totally different areas, did not know each other. But if you go get both of their books, Proof of a Conspiracy, I just made a video on that, series 176, and this one here I'm making now is 174, part 4. The first 3 parts were on the Illuminati. And I'm going to look inside this encyclopedia and see if there are any related topics, and continue to quote some of the material published in 1803, because I think it's important. And many years ago when I began my research, I wanted to find older books. I don't trust the material published currently. New and recent books, I think they've been altered. Indeed, if the account which the Abbé Burrell gives of Masonry be just, it must be admitted that even the secrets of the most ancient lodges, though in one sense harmless and just, are so expressed that they may be easily twisted to very dangerous purposes. This author was advanced by a few friends to the degree of master without being obliged to take out an oath of secrecy. So the author of this material that I'm reading, apparently Abbé Burrell, was given the degree without having to take the oath of secrecy, so he can say all that he wants without being threatened to be murdered. And being furnished with the signs, he got admission into the lodge, where he heard the secrets regularly communicated with all of the ordinary forms to an apprentice. It would be useful, says he, to describe the ceremonies and trials of such occasions, for in the 5th degree they are nothing more than just a play of children. The 1st degrees, sorry, it has a F there instead of an S. So they're nothing more than the play of children, the first 3 degrees that most people get, or the first 2 degrees. The grand object was the communication of the famous secret when the candidate was ordered to approach nearer to the venerable. At that moment, the brethren, who had been armed with swords for the occasion, drawing up 2 lines, held their swords elevated, leaning the points towards each other, and which formed what in Masonry is called an arc of steel. So they would have men standing on one side and another, and aiming their swords at each other. And apparently, I guess the candidate had to walk through that 2 lines of men with the extended swords underneath it, and that would have been an arc of steel. The candidate passed under this arc to a fort of altar elevated on the 2 steps at the farthest end of the lodge. The master, seated in an armchair, or the fort of throne behind this altar, pronounced a long discourse on the inviolability of the secret which was to be imparted, and on the danger of breaking the oath that the candidate was going to take. Pardon my reading. I hope it's clear enough. Sometimes I read more fluidly, and sometimes it's a little more difficult. He pointed to the naked swords, which were always ready to pierce the breast of the traitor, and declared to him that it was impossible to escape their vengeance. The candidate then swore that rather than betray the secret, he consented to have his head cut off, his heart and entrails torn out, and his ashes cast before the winds. So he was agreeing to have his head cut off and his stomach sliced open and his guts spilled out and his ashes cast into the wind if he told the secrets. Having taken the oath, the master said the following words to him. My dear brother, the secret of Masonry consists in these words. Oh boy, here we go. Equality and liberty. Now it sounds nice. I have learned a few things recently. When they're preaching equality and liberty, you go, what's wrong with equality? What's wrong with liberty? But what they hate is civilized society, organized governments, and organized religion. They want to return to the old ways. So when you see the triangle and equality, liberty on the bottom of this thing, and then the bottom is fraternity, that would be a Freemasonic lodge or the Illuminati or the Rosicrucians or any of these other secret societies, and they swear under threat of death not to divulge the secrets. What could be so harmful with equality and liberty? But the story is really told by the images on the left and the right. The Egyptian symbols, which you can find looking up Egyptian hieroglyphics. And if you recognize the symbols, the naked woman in chains, the lion's paws, the Egyptian symbols below, the snake at his throat. Remember the Sphinx in Egypt and the pyramids? The Ankh here with the circle on top of the T. And then, of course, the serpent here. And, of course, the all-seeing eye and pyramid on the U.S. $1 bill. The T with the circle, the T means divine. The circle on top is serpent. And if you look at a lot of the symbols, if you go look this stuff up, it actually is a serpent with a serpent's head and tail. And it's eating its tail, something to indicate eternity. It's eating itself. So it's the divine serpent. And the columns are important. The buildings, the two-headed eagle on the top was a representation of the phoenix. So when they recruited people, and all men are equal and free, and what they mean by free is free from all governments and all religion and all laws and all responsibility. It's a deception. All men are brethren. This master did not utter another syllable, and everybody embraced the new brother equal and free. The lodge broke up, and we gaily adjourned to a Masonic repast. So I guess they had a little social gathering. In the British lodges, the author admits that no other interpretation is given to the famous secret than as all men are children of one common parent and creatures of the same God, they are duly bound to love and help each other as brethren. But he contends that in France, it was differently interpreted. And he supports his opinion by the following arguments. On the 12th of August, 1792, Louis XVI was carried a prisoner to the tower of a temple because it formerly belonged to the Knights Templar. On that day, the rebel assembly decreed that to the date of liberty, the date of equality should be added in the future to all public acts. And the decree itself was directed the 4th year of liberty and the 1st year and the 1st day of equality. It was on that day, for the first time, that the secret of Freemasonry was made public, that the secret so dear to them, which they preserved with all of their solemnity of the most inviolable oath, all the reading of this famous decree, they exclaimed, we have at length succeeded, and France is no other than an immense lodge. So that they're saying the whole state of France is an immense lodge. The whole French people are Freemasons, and the whole universe will soon follow their example. The whole universe will be Freemasons. I witnessed, says the author, this enthusiasm. I heard the conversations to which gave rise. I saw Masons, till then the most reserved, who freely and openly declared, yes, at length, the great object of Freemasonry is accomplished. So I guess that all came about with Louis XVI was carried a prisoner to the tower of the temple, so called because it formerly belonged to the Knights Templar. Yes, at length, the great object of Freemasonry is accomplished. Equality and liberty. All men are equal and brother. All men are free. That was the whole substance of our doctrine, the object of our wishes, the whole of our grand secret. This is a very serious charge against the original secret of Masonry, as it was understood in France. And though the author does not bring it directly against the same secret as understood in Britain, he yet seems to say that all lodges that in all lodges the following question is put to the candidate before he is entrusted with any secret. Brother, you are disposed to execute all the orders of the Grand Master, though you were to receive contrary orders from a king or an emperor. So all these Masons, listen up here. Brother, you are disposed to execute all the orders of the Grand Master of the Freemasonic Lodge, of the Masonic Lodge, even though you were to receive contrary orders from the king or the emperor or any sovereign whatever, and as the brother is obliged to promise this unlimited obedience, it is easy to conceive how much treacherous traitors, conspiracies may be promoted by means of Mason lodges. So their highest allegiance was to the Masonic Lodge, who were into the great mysteries. And the question is, as we saw these symbols here, what is their religion? What are the great mysteries? It's taken me a while, but I'm getting closer to understanding. The allegorical story, which is told at the conferring of the degree of master, is capable of various and even contrary interpretations. For though in this country it was originally rendered subservient to the purposes of the royalist, in the occult lodges on the continent it has been made the vehicle of treason and impunity. I-M-P-I-E-T-Y, I'm saying it wrong. But you get the word treason. The occult lodges recruiting the people, having to obey the master, occult, witchcraft, magic, mysteries. When the degree of Master Mason is to be conferred, the lodge is hung round with black. In the middle is a coffin covered with a pall. So they have a coffin with a drape around it, I think. The brethren standing around it in attitudes denoting sorrow and revenge. When the new adept is admitted, the master relates to him the following history or fable. Here's where it gets a little interesting. Adoniram presided over the payment of the workers who were building the temple by Solomon's orders. King Solomon's temple. And the Adoni was the leader. It's going to be very important to remember that name. There were 3,000 workmen, so this Adoniram was in charge of paying everybody, that each one might receive his due. Adoniram divided them into 3 classes: apprentices, fellowcraft, and masons, masters. He entrusted each class with a word, signs, and a grip by which they might be recognized. So they had 3 different levels of employees. The apprentice would be somebody in training. The fellowcraft would be the next level up. And the master would be fully trained. So they had different levels of salary, paychecks. And how the paymaster knew how much to give them was by the sign that they gave, which identified them as an apprentice or a fellowcraft or a master. And they were told to keep that secret so that somebody couldn't learn it and just stand in line and collect money. So it seems. Each class was to preserve the greatest secrecy as to these signs and words. 3 of the fellowcrafts, wishing to know the word, and by that means obtain the salary of a master. So 3 of the fellowcrafts wanted to learn the secret word and sign for the master so they could get that kind of money. They hid themselves in the temple, and each posted himself at a different gate. At the usual time when Adoniram came to shut the gate of the temple, the first of the three men met him and demanded the word of the masters. Adoniram refused to give it and received a violent blow with a stick to his head. So this Adoniram flees to another gate, and he's met, challenged, and treated in a similar manner by the second fellow craft guy trying to get the word and the signs of master. So the Adoniram escaped again, flying to the third door. He is killed by the fellow craft posted there, and on his refuting to betray the word. So he refused to betray the word. His assailants buried him under a heap of rubbish and marked the spot with a branch of a cana tree. Adoniram's absence gave great uneasiness to Solomon, the king, and the other masters. He is sought for everywhere, and at length one of the masters discovers the corpse. And the king, and taking it by the finger pointed, parted from the hand. He took it from the wrist, and it parted from the arm, and the master in astonishment cried out, Mak Benak, which in the craft interprets, the flesh parts from the bones. So when they went to pick up this guy, they grabbed him by the finger and slipped right off the bone. He grabbed him by the wrist and his hand slipped right off the bone. And he grabbed him by the arm and the arm slipped right off the bone. The way I'm reading this. Left Adoniram should have revealed the word. Lest, got an F there, sorry. Least Adoniram should have revealed the word. The masters convened and agreed to change it, and to substitute the words Makbinek, sacred words that Freemasons dare not pronounce out of the lodges, and there each only pronounces one symbol, leaving his neighbor to pronounce the other one. So they don't dare to say the whole word. Magic words, abracadabra, hocus pocus. And King Solomon, FYI, apparently had a magic ring with 6-pointed star on it. Go look this stuff up, I say too. Don't believe me. And apparently it could open portals or another dimension and had control of demons, hence where he got his power. And other things like turning regular metal into gold, etc. I've gone over some of this magic stuff before. Seems to be everywhere part of the mysteries, the secrets. The history finished, the adept is informed that the object of the degree he has just received is to recover the lost word of the death of Adoniram. So this is the little story they teach the initiates. And to revenge this martyr of the Masonic secrecy. So they need to revenge the killing of this Adoniram. The generosity of Masons, looking upon this history, is no more than a fable, and the ceremonies more puerile, gave themselves very little trouble to search farther into the mysteries. So they're taught to search for the mysteries, the lost word. These sports, however, assume a more serious aspect when we arrive at the degree of elect, EU. This degree is subdivided into two parts. The first has the revenging of Adoniram for its object. So now that you move past the first 3 degrees, you have a revenge degree. And the other is to recover the word. So you have to study the mysteries, or rather the sacred doctrine. Remember, I've gone over Helena Blavatsky's The Sacred Doctrine, the same lady who created the Lucifer magazine, Lucifer Publishing Company, which is expressed and which has been lost. In this degree of elect, all the brethren appear dressed in black. Imagine this in one of these Masonic buildings. All the brethren appear dressed in black, wearing a breastplate on the left side, which is embroidered a death's head, so they have the skull and bones on their black outfit. A bone and a poignard, whatever that is, P-O-I-G-N-A-R-D, encircled by the motto, "Conquer or Die." The same motto is embroidered on a rib band, which they wear in Faltier. Everything breathes death. Everything breathes death and revenge. The candidate is led into the lodge blindfolded with bloody gloves on his hands. So the candidate now is led back into the lodge with bloody gloves on his hands. An adept with a poignard on his hand threatens to run him through the heart for the crime which he has been accused. After various frights, he obtains his life on condition that he will revenge the father of Masonry in the death of his assailant. He is shown into a dark cavern. So now they take him into a dark cavern. He is to penetrate into it, and they call to him, "Strike all that shall oppose you." So they send him into a dark cavern and tell him to strike all that oppose you. Enter, defend yourself, and avenge our master. At that price shall you receive the degree of the elect. So they send him into a dark cave, and anybody who gets in his way, he is to slay them, and that's how he's going to receive his degree. A poignard in his right hand. I'm not so sure, is that a dagger or something? A lamp in his left. He proceeds. A phantom opposes his passage. So they got some guy in there like you're at Halloween. Like a spook comes up out of nowhere. And he hears the same voice repeat. So these other guys are going, "Strike! Avenge Hiram! There is his assassin." So the candidate strikes and the blood flows. "Strike off his head," they are yelling. The voice repeats, and the head of the corpse is lying at his feet. He seizes it up by the hair. It's probably a mannequin. And triumphantly carries it back as a proof of his victory, shows it to each of the brethren, and is judged worthy of a new degree. Our author says that he has questioned divers Masons whether this apprenticeship so secretly, so ferociously, and murder had never been given them and not to them. Let's try if I can read that again. Our author says that he has questioned divers Masons whether this apprenticeship to ferocity and murder had never given them the idea that the head to be cut off was that of a king. So the author of this book asked some other Masons, "Was that head you cut off the head of a king?" But they all affirmed that such an idea had never occurred to them till the French Revolution had convinced them that this was the fact. So it was the Freemasons that were the instrument arm of the revolution, where the conspirators were murdering these people. And as we read previously from this encyclopedia, it was the Illuminati who had infiltrated the Freemasonic lodges and taken control. At this indeed we are not surprised. The assassin of Hiram is nowhere said to have been a king. And why should the young elect have supposed that when stabbing that assassin, they were training to be a regicide, I guess killing royal people? The ceremony, however, is certainly serious, ferocious, in the highest degree, obviously calculated to reconcile the Masons of the lodges to the practice of assassination at the command of their superiors. So this was a training exercise to be an assassin, and they have to obey the commands. And when it is remembered that they are bound to pay obedience to those unseen superiors, even against their lawful sovereigns, the atrocities of the revolution would naturally make them interpret this shocking ceremony as to interpreted by the abbey. So later on, a lot of people figured out what they were doing. And a lot of people have left the Freemasons over the years, written books about it. Even the Illuminati told about the inside goings on. There's videos on YouTube you can go watch. And granted, this is a tedious process to try to understand. You can see kind of the material, physical, human aspect of it. But if you keep reviewing this material, you're going to find an invisible reality, spiritual, demonic, fallen angel, something like that, mysterious religion aspect of it. That's what took me a while. But I suspect that's why they do it this way. They want to keep the truth from the rest of us. And I think I can prove by continuing reading that this has everything to do with World War I, World War II, French Revolution, 9/11, and all the goings on in the Middle East, the propaganda, New Age, New World Order, globalism. It says it in here. It was the same with respect to the religious part of this degree, where the adept was at once pontiff, like a priest, or sacrificer with the rest of the brethren. Vested in the ornaments of the priesthood, they offer bread and wine according to the order of Melchizedek. So I said, remember Adoni. And now I came across this thing, this religious component. They offer bread and wine according to the order of Melchizedek. So I went and looked that up. Well, there's no mistaking that they have this according to the order of Melchizedek, and that they use the word Adonai earlier. So if you know me, I went and looked up the order of Melchizedek. What is this religion we're talking about? You can go look it up too. So if the Freemasonic people vested in the ornaments of the priesthood, they offer bread and wine according to the order of Melchizedek. The secret object of this ceremony is to reestablish religious equality and to exhibit all men equally, priests and pontiffs, to recall the brethren to natural religion, and to persuade them that the religion of Moses and of Christ had violated religious equality and liberty by the distinction of priest and laity. So it's all about what's going on in the world today. From my opinion anyways, in my research, trying to figure out WTH, what the heck is going on? So here the Freemasonic order, and there's more related information, Even in the information from this encyclopedia 200 years ago on the Illuminati, it clearly says they want to destroy all known governments and religions. There is something behind this. And here they're doing a ceremony according to the order of Melchizedek. And I'm saying all these things are going on, like the assassination of President Kennedy at a Freemasonic location, Delaney Plaza, the Twin Towers being some kind of satanic symbolism. There's plenty of material on that. The card game of the Illuminati shows all these incidences. And of course, 911 allowed the powers that be trying to bring about globalism for a couple hundred years, communism. I've been going over this stuff, to overthrow a lot of nations in the Middle East and increasing the might and power and wealth of Israel, which was one of the descendants of Jacob, who had a son named Israel, and now we have a country named Israel. It's all connected. And then it says Melchizedek, and I knew nothing. I said, well, what has that got to do with this? And it has everything to do with it. The dual offices of the coming Messiah as priest and king. Melchizedek was king of Salem. If you know anything about witchcraft, they were burning witches at the stake at Salem. I noticed these words. And priest of God Most High back in the days of Abraham. Our coming Messiah will also be both priest and king after the order of Melchizedek. He alone can fulfill this office. So I was reading this. Herein lies the promise and the surety of Israel's end-time restoration. So you don't have to be a genius to see that Israel has everything to do with 911. And if you've been doing any homework or watching my videos or doing your own research, you know that the Zionist, elitist, Jewish bankster folks all over the world had a strong hand in World War I, World War II, bringing about those events to get leaders from around the world to cooperate, creating the State of Israel, and to destroy the Ottoman Empire in Turkey, who controlled the Middle East, because it's right there, Turkey, Greece. So they had to bring down the Ottoman Empire, like you had to bring down Britain or bring down the United States. So there were purposes to all this. And then they had to take over the USA money supply in 1913 on December 21st, a winter solstice, another one of these mysteries, religion, witchcraft holidays. So let's talk about Melchizedek, mentioned in the Freemasonic ritual here. Melchizedek was a real person who lived during the time of Abraham, about 2000 BC, about 4,000 years ago. He was a righteous and godly leader over a very special piece of real estate, the ancient city of Salem, the city of God's peace, later to be known as Jerusalem. He was an earthly priest king. So what they want to do is they want this new Messiah that's coming to rule over the governments and rule over the churches, clearly connecting church and state, which they preach to all of us these days that should be separated. And I've been saying they've never been separated. The evil side of religion, the secret societies have been controlling our governments. And they didn't want the Christians or other religious people to be in government opposing them. And people were killed over that. He was an earthly priest king, and in the manner of many early leaders of those times, he presided over the religion and the politics of his city. The significant thing about Melchizedek was not only the place of his rule and ministry, which was over the holy place, but that he operated in two offices as both priest and king. Melchizedek has been recognized as a type or a forerunner of our coming Messiah, who, as we know, presides eternally over the cosmos and its people in those dual mutually supported offices as High Priest and King of Kings. As we read the accounts of Genesis 14, 18, 19, and 20, we see that our patriarch Abraham gave Melchizedek tithes, just like Christians give the church, they're supposed to 10% tithes. And Melchizedek blessed Abraham and his family. Melchizedek also brought out bread and wine. And if you go to a Christian church, we celebrate the ceremony on Sunday with bread and wine, which are the constant and continuing elements of the covenant meal among the covenant people of the God of Israel. The bread and the wine are the elements that are still laid out before us in our Christian communion services today. That's what I just said. Here are the 3 verses from Genesis giving us the bulk of what we know about him biblically and historically. Genesis 14, 18. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was the priest of God Most High. 19, Genesis 14. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram of God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. 20. And blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand, and he gave him a tithe of all. Here are some general principles and some conclusions we can draw out of these 3 verses. The order of Melchizedek has 2 offices, or ordained authorities of operation here on earth, those being of kingdom and priesthood. So remember this globalization, New World Order, New Age, and even that one book review I made on 67, The Jewish Utopia by Robert Williams, an intelligence officer retired from the military, and so many other books I've gone over. So this is part of the religious spiritual component I've been talking about, which is mentioned in the Freemasonic ritual. The 2 are not independent of one another, as we shall describe later on in this article. Both authorities operate in harmony and unity in a mutually supportive communion. The communion of the Most High God is entered into by faith and flows out of a 2-way blood covenant, which a person of faith makes with the high priest and king who ministers and rules in the order of Melchizedek. The homage and the tribute, which includes the tithe, are owed to the one who rules in righteousness and ministers in grace in the order of Melchizedek. Those who are truly in the family of Abraham will recognize and respond to their Messiah as king and high priest of their lives, and they will voluntarily, out of their heart, give him 1/10 of what comes to them. The blessings, the honor, and the anointing of God Most High flow out whenever a member of Abraham's family of faith enters in communion and makes a covenant with the priest king who legitimately ministers and rules in the order of Melchizedek. The holy city of Jerusalem belongs to the kingdom of the Most High priesthood in the order of Melchizedek. Accordingly, it should never be divided by presumptuously world leaders or profaned by godless pagans. And I did see a press release today, December 2017, I think it's the 6th, that President Donald Trump declared Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and I guess he was going to move the embassy there. So there's more to this behind the scene, and if you look at Donald Trump's condominium in downtown New York City, there's pictures of it online. It certainly looks like a Freemasonic lodge. Quite opulent with all the black and white tiles and the statues and the columns inside, just like you see here, the columns. And so without a doubt, I would suspect that President Donald Trump is a high priest in the Illuminati or Freemasons. So he's into this mystery religion. And of course, we all know that the powers that be put only their own in office. And since President Donald Trump took office, he sent the mother of all bombs to Afghanistan, exploded it, and 58 missiles towards Syria. And a lot of weird things have been going on. So these things do appear to be connected. The order of Melchizedek will be seen in Christ when he returns to this earth as Messiah. There will be an apocalyptic conflict centered around Jerusalem as he returns. So the stuff in the biblical prophecy in the Bible seems to indicate this stuff in Revelations. And why will this be happening? In the latter days, the holy city will be trampled by raging heathen nations. So the rest of us in the world are going to be called raging heathen nations. So they would have us believe. And they're the ones bringing about the propaganda, bringing about this decadent society we are living in, even teaching homosexuality to kids in grade school and so much other stuff. The holy people will enter into the Great Tribulation during this same period. When that happens, there will be a Masonic intervention. So they're going to bring about all this decadency and paganism and profane, godless people all over the world. They're doing this intentionally. I've gone over the books To Eliminate the Opaque by Rabbi Marvin Entleman and so much more. They want to bring about an ungodly planet because they want to induce the Messiah to come. And everybody's playing along. At the close of this age, remember we are entering the age of Aquarius, so they tell us, our coming Messiah will be unveiled in all his glory in the apocalypse, and he will deliver Jerusalem from Armageddon, returning his holy people as the breaker. He will deliver his congregation who are in exile. That would be the diaspora, where they've been dispersed from that area for almost 4,000 years. And they're doing a program now called Aliyah, the Return. They even have planes with Aliyah. No, I've shown the pictures. You can go look up Aliyah on Yahoo image site and see all that. As the sheep of Bozrah, he will smash the armies gathered against his holy city of Jerusalem as they muster in the valley of Jezreel and Armageddon. Then he will judge the nations and issue his passport for the 1,000-year millennium of Messiah at the sheep-goat judgment. There is no doubt about it. The Messiah's second coming will be decisive. His dual office and the office of Melchizedek will be established for all eternity, and the long-awaited peace of Jerusalem will finally come. So even if you watch my video, 911 Synthetic Terror by Webster Tarpley, the Mossad and Israeli agents had a strong hand in 911. There was no question these days by many people who are serious researchers that it was well planned, and it took well over a year to execute and install all those explosive devices. So it's just hard for me to believe that this would be God's chosen people who would be doing all the things these elite Zionist, bankster people into the Kabbalah, mysticism, Jewish people, and others have done. World War I, World War II, and so much more. I don't think That would be the God that Jesus talks about, his Father in heaven, a place of many mansions. When Satan takes him to the top of a mountain and says, "Get onto your knee, Jesus, to me, and I will give you all of this." He was talking about the kingdoms on earth, and Jesus turned him down and says, "In my Father's house there are many mansions, other than another place other than earth." The order of Melchizedek will ultimately be seen in our Lord Jesus Christ. This dual anointing belongs to him exclusively, and all legitimate authority comes from him and him alone. Yeshua Hashmashish, our coming Messiah, is the true and only anointed one. And how do we know this? King David, the one with the magic ring who could call forth demons, under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, wrote a song announcing the reign of the coming Messiah. He tells us that the coming Lord of this earth, here's what I talked about earlier, Adonai. Remember Adonai and the stuff I was reading? Was the paymaster paying the salary of thousands of workers? The reign of the coming of Adonai. So a lot of this stuff is like allegory, suggesting something or a cover story. He tells us that the coming Lord of this earth, Adonai, we mentioned Adonai before I got to Melchizedek, is commissioned and empowered by God, the Father Yahweh, God, to rule as a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. So Psalms 110, you can go look up in the Bible, the Psalm of David. The Lord Yahweh said to my Lord Adonai, "Sit at my right hand, till I make your enemies your footstool. The Lord Yahweh shall send the rod of your strength out of Zion." I keep talking about Zionism. "Rule in the midst of your enemies." So why would we citizens of the earth, people like me, be the enemies of anybody and be destroyed? Your people shall be volunteers in the day of your power. In the beauty of holiness, from the womb of the morning, you have the dew of your youth. The Lord Yahweh has sworn and will not relent. You are priests forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. You can go look this up, please. I'll show you the web link on the bottom here. So I'll get back to the Freemasonry section of this encyclopedia. Published in 1803, where we left off that vested in the ornaments of the priesthood, they offer bread and wine according to the order of Melchizedek, page 459 in this encyclopedia. So would we say they do have some kind of religion, and are they connected to the Israel and the Jews there in Zionism? And we already know the Freemasons were taken over by the Illuminati, and the Illuminati were under the control of the Rothschilds and other bloodlines of the Illuminati, according to Fritz Springmeier's book and other books I've gone over. And the secret object of this ceremony is to reestablish religious equality and to exhibit all men equally priests and pontiffs, and to recall the brethren to natural religion. And remember, the Jews, not all Jews, but we non-Jews are called goy and goyim, which means cattle. So when they say all men will be priests and pontiffs, that means them. The rest of us are not men, we're cattle. It's important to understand when you're reading this stuff what they think. And I've gone over books where this stuff is explained. You can look it up. and to persuade them that the religion of Moses and of Christ had violated religious equality and liberty by the distinction of priest and laity. It was the revolution again which opened the eyes of many of the adepts who they owed that they had been dupes to this impunity. So a lot of people woke up, Masons back then, that they had been duped, as they had been to this regicide FA of the former part. So they were part of killing all of the royalty or all the other people in France during the revolution. Regicide, killing the regal, I guess. Our author treats the fraternity of the occult lodges. So the stuff I read about Melchizedek is part of this occult stuff, this mystery religion. The higher degrees of Scotch Masonry. It's really not Scotch, as we learned about in the first section of this encyclopedia. It actually came from France and created by Wusthof from Germany. So it wasn't Scotch. Scotch was the old Masonic order in Britain, where they have Scotland. It was hijacked. Those of the Rosicrucians, here you go, and those of the Knight Kodesh, and sums up his account in the following terms. In the 2 first degrees, that is to say, in those of apprentice and fellowcraft, the sect begins by throwing out its equality and liberty terminology. People don't know what it means. After that, it occupies the attention of the novices with puerile games of fraternity and of Masonic repats, R-E-P-A-F-T-S, R-E-P-A, repast. But it already trains its adepts to be profoundly secrecy by the most frightful oaths. So they have to take oaths under threat of death, having their throat cut or their guts spilled out. And the higher degrees you get, the description of your death gets worse. In that of Master, it relates to the allegorical history of a Donny. I just said that Donny, who he was, who is to be avenged, and of the word which is to be recovered. So is this Adoniram, the same Adoni in the order of the Melchizedek I went over? And I would suspect it is, because Adoni is mentioned here, and 20 sentences above it says Melchizedek. In the degree of elect, it trains the adepts to vengeance without pointing out the person to whom it is to fail. So they really don't tell the adepts who they're going to be avenging. They kind of have an allegorical fable or story to suggest such a thing. It carries them back to the time of the patriots. That would be this Abraham, the ancient Jewish people's religion, which according to them, men knew no religion but that of nature. So back then, if they want to return to the time back then, it's men knew no religion but that of nature. And when everybody was equally priest and pontiff. So everybody was a priest or a pope or whatever, pontiff. But it had not as yet declared that all religion revealed since the time of the patriots was to be thrown aside. So I read to you earlier in this thing here that they want to recall the brethren to natural religion. I read this earlier. To persuade them that the religions of Moses and of Christ had violated religious equality and liberty by the distinction of priest and laity. And least we forget it was some of the Jews back then who had Jesus Christ crucified. And when Moses led the Jews out of Egypt, He went up to the mountain, Mount Sinai, to talk to God, the burning bush, whatever. Came down with the 2 tablets, the 10 Commandments. And the Hebrews had gathered together all the gold, built a golden calf, and were having a drunken orgy, a satanic ritual to the pagan god of the Egyptians. Hence, we have the Egyptian hieroglyphics and these beasts with lion's paws and other symbols on the New Age magazine of the Freemasons. This last mystery is only developed in the Scotch degrees. There the brethren are declared free. The word so long sought for, deism, is the worship of Jehovah. Deism is worshiping a deity, and they're calling Jehovah a deity, such as was known to the philosophers of nature. So if nature science, natural science, witchcraft, was worshiping a deity, I am theorizing here, and they're saying it right here, deism is the worship of Jehovah. Is Jehovah Satan? Lucifer? Deism? The true Mason becomes the pontiff of Jehovah. So the Masons are now worshiping Jehovah. And such is the grand mystery, and this is the grand mystery, it says here, and such is the grand mystery by which he is extricated from the darkness in which the profane are involved. So the Mason, initiated into the worship of the deity Jehovah, will be extricated from the darkness from which the profane, the rest of us, are still in. We're not worshiping Jehovah the deity in the order of Melchizedek, along with this Adonai entity. In the degree Raphae Crucis, sounds like Rosie Crucian, he is rested the Word who destroyed the worship of Jehovah is Christ himself, the authority of Christianity. And it is on the gospel and on the Son of Man that the adept is to avenge the brethren, the pontiffs of Jehovah. At length, on his reception at Kadesh, he learns that the assailant of Adonai, Ram, is the king who is to be killed to avenge the Grand Master Molay and the order of Masons, successors of the Knights Templar. So apparently this goes all the way back where the Masons were originally Knights Templars, at least the mysteries component of it. The religion which is to be destroyed to recover the Word, the religion which is to be destroyed to recover the Word, or the true doctrine, is the religion of Christ. So they have to destroy Christianity. According to page 459, I'm reading this here, founded on revelation. This word in its full extent is equality and liberty to be established by the total overthrow of the altar and the throne. So they need to overthrow all the churches and all the governments. Such are the incipient degrees, the precepts, and the whole system of Masonry. It is thus that the sect is, by its gradual explanation of its twofold principle of equality and liberty, of its allegory of the founder of Masonry, to be avenged, of the Word to be recovered, leading the adepts from secret to secret, at length initiating them into the whole of Jacobean code of revolution. The Jacobean code of revolution. Jacob's was one of the relative sons or sons of Abraham, and the son of the Jacob was Israel. And I'm not a religious scholar here. If you want to get all the exact details, you know where to look. Go on the internet, search these things, and print out these pages like I do. But there's definitely a connection here. Ancient mystery religion. And why were the Jewish people, the Hebrews, dispersed, called the diaspora, all over the world for pretty much 4,000 years? In the last couple thousand years, many videos on YouTube exposing this, books and websites, 90 different countries, they were banned or expelled or exiled or imprisoned or made to wear badges. And their religion was the Kabbalah, and many times they were accused of abducting little Christian boys and bleeding them for some kind of religious ceremony. You can't make this stuff up. And not all Jews. A lot of Jews that still were God-fearing Jews did not turn towards the dark side. Remember, Jesus was a Hebrew. There were a lot of cults of Jewish people back then, Hebrews, that did not turn from Jesus. But there were some that did, apparently. If this account of Masonry be not greatly exaggerated, what are we to think of those men among ourselves who, since the publication of the Abbey Burrell's book and Dr. Robinson's, have displayed a zeal for the propagation of their mysteries by which they seem not to be formally actuated? So they're preaching these mystery teachings, trying to destroy Christianity, but it may not be actually a religion that they actually believe in, and to which the importance of the beliefs, benefits, by their own account, is truncated in the lodges, translated in the lodges, and cannot be thought to bear an adequate proportion. It is not enough to say that Britain Masonry is harmless, and that the equality and liberty taught by our lodges are the equality and liberty taught in the Bible. So they're playing with words and meanings, and there's nothing new about that in history. Well, like I said, it's a long, tedious process, trying to understand what's going on in the world, why things are happening. But I like to find old books like this, an encyclopedia printed 200 years ago by two very well-known authors, one a university professor, the other one an abbey of the church, and all this other words that I look up. A lot of people would just read on and not stop and go look up those words and find out exactly what they mean. That's how you get to the bottom of the story, to the truth. Without directly questioning this assertion, we only beg leave to put our countrymen in remembrance that France and Germany Masonry, as it was derived from Britain, must have been originally as harmless as its own. So originally, when these Masonic organization lodges were transferred, originally they were probably harmless until taken over by certain factions, royal family, bloodlines of elites, people into witchcraft and the Kabbalistic cults, the mystery religion, and to call their attention to the monstrous superstructures of impunity and rebellion which in these countries have been raised upon our foundation. So the reign of fire during the French Revolution was horrific. Who was behind it? Who's behind 9/11? Who's behind giving Israel billions of dollars from the U.S. taxpayers' money every year? And sometimes much more money, grants and guarantees of loans. And apparently part of this is all the corporations. And they are trying to separate who runs our world from the church and the state to the corporations, and who controls the money in the corporations. You don't need to be Sherlock Holmes to think about it and come up with a conclusion here. There's something more than ordinary thinking. And a lot of people would go, these people are not so intelligent and smart. Look what I'm reading. They want you to think that it can't be organized. Have there been no symptoms of sedition and irreligion among us since the commencement of the French Revolution, that we should be so confident that the equality and liberty of our lodges will never degenerate into the equality and liberty of the French Jacobins? And who were the Jacobins? I've got to look into that some more, but apparently it's part of the descendants of Abraham to Jacob, and then later on Israel. Descendants of Abraham, that's their names. This cannot be said, for it has been proved that there are several occult lodges in Britain, and what security have we, and what security can we receive that their number will not increase? This is 200 years ago. It did increase. They control the world right now. I have to make a video on this book. Trilateralism. Nice big thick book. Talks a lot about this global control. They don't want to go local. They want to go global. And here in our small towns, like in North Carolina, you go by the store and it says, buy local, buy local. It's all part of their propaganda, messing with our minds. They don't want to go local. They want to go global. And why should some global country over there in the Middle East called Israel control the town I live in North Carolina, or a town in Florida, or a town in Ohio, or Nebraska? Why should they be bringing us Agenda 21, controlling the United Nations, Agenda 2030? Why should they be controlling the Pentagon, NATO, the banking system, intelligence agencies, giving us choices for presidents like Hillary Clinton or President Donald Trump? Aren't there better men to be selected out there? But I suppose they don't want anybody of religion or of government, as it says here. The legislature indeed has lately laid some statutory restraints on the meeting of the Masons, but such is the nature of these meetings that nothing can effectively secure us against the introductions of the higher mysteries, but the voluntary shutting up of a time of the lodges. So they tried to shut down the lodges, even in the United States for a while, after they killed Captain Bill William Morgan. You can go get this book, Exposes Freemasonry. He wrote this book. They abducted him and killed him the way they describe when you swear on a Bible, your threat of death, having your throat cut and your gut ripped open and thrown on a beach. I guess they threw him on a beach in Lake Erie because he wrote this book exposing Freemasonry. This has been done by the honest Masons in Germany, and what may not be done by the Masons in Britain. The fund for the relief of the poor brethren may surely be managed without secrecy. The signs in grip may be communicated without the word, or exacting a promise of implicit obedience, and relinquishing of the joys of the social hour would be no great sacrifice in the peace of the country. So they don't really have to be doing these secret oaths and swearing under threat of death not to divulge the secrets if they really wanted to be philanthropic and help poor people. It doesn't make sense, their excuse. But is Britain Masonry really so harmless as the younger Masons want us to believe? The writer of these reflections was never initiated into the mysteries, and therefore cannot, from his own knowledge, say what is their tendency. But he has no hesitation to affirm, because he believes himself to demonstrate that it is grossly immoral to promise implicit obedience to an unknown superior, and to swear that one will keep inviolate a secret to the nature of which he is an absolute stranger. He hopes and indeed and is inclined to believe that in the decent lodges of Britain the candidate assured, before he is required to take an oath, that the secret to be communicated and the obedience which he is to pay, militant in no respect against the civil government or the religion of that country. So, he's hoping that people who get initiated in Britain will make sure that they don't have to go against their civil government or go against the religion of the country. But still, if the secret contain information of value, it is, in his opinion, sinful to keep it a secret. And if he cannot conceive upon what principles a native of Britain can promise unlimited obedience to any human being. So this smart man, Abbey Burrell, is saying, how can anybody swear blind obedience to something which they don't even know what they're swearing to? And we've already seen here that they want to destroy all the governments of the world, like it says in the topic under Illuminati, and all the religious organizations of the world. And part of this is the order of Melchizedek, part of the Hebrew religion, and bringing back some kind of Messiah to rule the world, rule the governments and the religion, one king being. The mysteries of Masonry must relate to something which is either important or laudable, frivolous, though innocent, or dangerous and immoral. What do you think all of this is for? Just an innocent, frivolous thing? Or dangerous and immoral? Some of us have common sense. We can think this through. We can look up this stuff. To confine to a sect any information which is laudable and important is surely not an act on the part of genuine philanthropy. Got interrupted by my phone. So I just got a couple sentences left here. So to administer the most tremendous oaths in the midst of frivolous amusements is to violate one of the most sacred precepts of our holy religions. And as no man will pretend to vindicate dangerous and immoral mysteries, Masonry appears at every point in which it can be placed no affection which no good Christian will think himself at liberty to encourage. So, from everything I read, any thinking, intelligent Christian person or otherwise might call some of these things that goes on and what they teach in these organizations, they might just get a little suspicious and say, hey, maybe I shouldn't belong and be a part of this. Who is their God and deity? Why do they want to destroy governments? Why do they want to destroy all the religions? And we all know, if people have been paying attention, that they're saying the word globalism and one world currency and one world religion, and they're preaching the new age. And it's like an addiction to people everywhere. We get all this information on the gay agenda and transgenderism and all this propaganda and false flags, gun shootings, terrorisms, satanic rituals, Emmys, Grammys, Super Bowl halftime shows, putting the archway to Baal, the devil, in London, New York, and later on I find out through UNESCO, 1,000 of these all over the world. In CERN, they say when they turn it on, they can see this vortex tunnel with beings who have come through, and so much other occult, sinister witchcraft activity that it should concern us all these symbols out there. TV programs like Lucifer, Modern Family. This has been going on for a while. And this was 200 years ago where they were talking about destroying the governments, destroying the churches. And look what I read about the Melchizedek, Hebrew religion information, about the coming kind of a Messiah and Armageddon. Oh my, I still think we all need to wake up and, it doesn't hurt to talk to God and read the Bible and get it right up here. Don't believe these people who say that it's all a myth. Don't listen to it. Don't get worried. Just be happy. Nothing's going to happen. Don't worry about all the fires in California, the chemtrailing and HARP transmitters controlling the weather, directed energy weapons. You can look this stuff up. But don't worry about the 5G network coming online that can pretty much microwave you and your whole town. Don't worry about your TV or your iPad or your cell phone that's listening to you and watching you. It just seems to me that these people have been busy for quite a while. Aldous Huxley, Brave New World. I've got hundreds of books in my office here that I haven't even looked at on these topics. Hundreds more I haven't shared in videos. I've got like 1,000 books. And so far we've only looked at about 200. Some of them's only because it's like David Icke. I've got 6 or 7 of his books. So I'm up to 176. This is part 4 of 174 of the Encyclopaedia, published in 1803. So thank you for watching my video. Rick Miracle reporting.